Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you are. Welcome to the Early Stage Professionals webinar. I'm Lisa Panarello, your host, founder of Careers Advance. All right, we're going to kick things off with some alarming facts. 50% of Fortune companies have stopped hiring. In April, the unemployment rate was 19%. And more than 66,000 small businesses have shut down since the pandemic lockdown. This is surely a dismal picture. And it is the gloom and doom that the media has been sharing. Now, while these facts are true, the story that gets buried, what you don't really hear much on the news, is the positive side of the coin. So I'm going to share it. 25% of Fortune companies are hiring more right now. The unemployment rate fell by 7.6% last month. And more than 4 million jobs have been created in May and June across key industries, including healthcare, manufacturing, construction, retail, and professional services. That's the largest monthly gains in US history. Now, sure, we are facing some uphill battles, but every decade has its challenges. In the 70s and 80s, the variety of jobs available was incredibly limited. In my 20s, there was no Google. There were no job search engines. I had to literally huff it by foot, bus, and train to visit employment agencies and wait all day for hours. I sifted through hundreds of tiny square classifieds in the newspaper to read 10-word job descriptions. And I applied by snail mail and fax. In the early 2000s, the collapse of the dot-com bubble, 9/11, accounting scandals, and major corporations caused an 18-month recession, longest since World War II. Job market challenge is not a new phenomenon. The hurdles just change, and they can be overcome. And that's why we're here today. We've got a great panel who are going to share their latest knowledge and tips on how to navigate the job market and set yourself up for success. So a quick introduction is in order, and I encourage you to reach out to these folks later because they're great people to have in your corner. First up, Pamela Shand, a prominent career coach. As the founder of Offer Stage Consulting, she's dedicated nearly 15 years of her world to helping job seekers achieve their goals. And she also guides professionals in talent acquisition and authored How to Hire, a recruitment playbook for rookie recruiters, new managers, and growing businesses. I attended Pamela's webinars and witnessed her branding and job search expertise firsthand. So we're excited to have you with us, Pamela. Next up, Shayla Foley. She's the Vice President of Consumer Growth Marketing at WayUp, a unique digital platform with humanized resources that helps early career candidates get discovered by employers. She leads every aspect related to user acquisition and retention. And prior to WayUp, Shayla held senior marketing leadership roles at e-commerce brands, where she turned data analysis into actionable strategies. She truly knows how to identify and address business and candidate needs. So we're in for a real treat. Next, we have Dr. Jairo Borgia. He's the president of Borgia Consulting Group. He assists small businesses with planning, strategy, training, and development. And he launched his practice off the heels of a 15-year career in the financial and higher education sector. At Berkeley College, he managed a team in sourcing internships, federal work study, and employment opportunities for students and graduates. Jairo is also the international best-selling author of How to Network Your Way to Success. So we're certainly eager for Jairo's insights today. And last, but certainly not least, Kevin Fallon, the Director of Career Services at Salisbury University. He leads the delivery of professional development services to more than 8,500 students and alumni from over 55 degree programs. Prior to joining Salisbury, Kevin blazed a 22-year journey in talent acquisition and development leadership roles with global Fortune companies such as PricewaterhouseCoopers and Bank of America. He is a regularly requested speaker at conferences. I've seen him myself, and it's why I've asked him to join us today. Now you've met our panel. Well, I've got 6 hard-hitting questions to ask them. And during our discussion, I encourage everyone on this call, please throw your thoughts and questions into the chat box below so we can address some in the moment, and then we'll leave a window at the end for more Q&A. All right? So let's get this started with a big fat query around culture. You know, we hear this term a lot. It has many definitions based on one's perspective. I think one of the most common views of culture is diversity. Ethnicities, genders, ages, even personalities. Some folks consider culture to be about the values of the organization, what's really important to the firm, such as integrity, ongoing learning, philanthropy. Others see culture as how employees are treated, the benefits that are offered, the advancement opportunities, maybe work-life balance. And even the environment can enter the equation of culture, like the physical workspace we work in. I think everyone on this call should really define what culture means to you. Well, that said, I'm going to come to you first. Pamela, can you share with us 2 to 3 of the biggest changes you see coming down the pike in terms of workplace culture?
Awesome. So for me, culture is really the personality of the company. It's not just one thing. It's what it truly feels like to be there outside of the technical things and the revenue and all of those things. When I think about the workplace of the future and what the culture is going to look like, there are a few things that come to mind, quite honestly. Number one, I'm thinking about the workplace of the future is definitely going to be more flexible. I think if there's anything that COVID-19 has taught employers, it's the importance of being flexible and being really able to offer that to your people. The ability to work remote, the ability to work in different ways from different places. That it's really more so about getting the work done than about having everyone come into the office. And I think we're going to see more of that in the future. Definitely there's going to be a stronger focus in terms of soft skills. Employers looking for that from their people, your ability to problem solve and your ability to pivot when needed. Employers I'm seeing them be even more open to train on the technical stuff, but if you can bring those problem solving skills and that emotional intelligence, they're willing to train on the other thing. It's going to be a huge thing going into the future. Also, I see a bigger focus on safety as well. Being able to come to work and feel safe and feel secure, all those things are definitely going to be a part of the workplace culture of the future. And definitely more tech driven as well.
That's some great insights. Thank you for that. So Kevin, can you add to that your thoughts on what early stage professionals should expect corporate culture to look like in the coming years?
I've been reading a lot of really fascinating stuff about this. One of the articles I read just this last week was, how do you have workplace culture when you don't really have a workplace? When it's no longer a brick and mortar workplace. And so, you see little challenges. For example, when you communicate with a coworker via email, because you can't walk across and pop into their office and talk to them or ask them a question. Sometimes people read the emails wrong. They read the email and they infer a certain tone or a certain demeanor that's not necessarily there, and you would have never had that problem if you were in person, right? So there's that. I think COVID's teaching the workplace so much. If you look at Silicon Valley, okay, so home to LinkedIn, Facebook, Google, Apple, 1,000 square feet of house will cost you over $1 million. Okay, so think about that for a minute. A 1,000 square foot, what we consider here on the East Coast to be starter house, okay, is $1 million. And so the younger workforce out there is like, we just can't afford this. So as they're learning that people don't need to be physically in that geography anymore and can work from anywhere in the world, the Human Resources Department is starting to say, hey, wait a minute, maybe we can save a lot of money on employee salaries if we allow people to be elsewhere, spread throughout the United States. And maybe it will help us from a recruitment and a retention standpoint. So I think that's a pretty interesting trend. I think the most important thing, if you are a job seeker, I tell all of my job seekers this, the most important thing, especially early stage career folks, that you need to focus on is making yourself the foremost expert on emotional intelligence and the ability to deal with ambiguity and to deal with constant, rapid change. And I know for a lot of folks that can be a challenge. You know, we as human beings, we naturally crave structure and stability, right? That's gone right now, especially in COVID, because the answers change every single day. I have so many employers that I work with that have said, if it's a V-shaped recovery and we ramp up quickly, our hiring needs are going to explode and we need to be prepared for that. But at the same time, they're seeing some of the other news and saying, this might take a little bit longer to climb out of. We don't know. So it's the not knowing. So it's being able to deal with that, be effective and be productive and be structured. I think, you know, as Pamela mentioned, you know, employers, and if you're an early stage career professional that manages people and you have people who report to you, you're going to have to become much more comfortable and flexible with this work from home model. And you're going to have to leverage technology the best you can to make sure that, you know, productivity remains high. And if you are, you know, as the employee, looking at it from the employee standpoint, separating work from life is much, much harder. You know, I might look like I'm in a studio, but I'm really in the guest room and I've got the dog right outside the door. And when the dog starts telling me he wants to go for a walk and he looks at me with that face, right, gets a little tempting, but you know, so it's all about keeping that focus and that discipline.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Yeah, thanks, Pamela and Kevin. You really painted a very unique picture of this sort of work from home situation, which I think is almost defining the culture right now. So it seems the companies seem to be very focused on safety, and yet the future is so ambiguous that all of our young folks are coming into, they might have to create their own culture or learn how to live in this very ambiguous kind of environment. So I appreciate you sharing that.
And if anybody joining us today is a leader of people, I think the number one task as a leader of people, if you have people who report to you, your number one focus has absolutely, positively got to be on reinforcing the message to your team that their health, safety, and well-being is the most important thing to you as the leader, and that you are willing and flexible to do whatever it takes to keep them healthy, safe, and productive.
Absolutely. Now, sorry, I was going to say, focusing on your people it's so critical right now at every stage of the recruitment process, from the sourcing to the interviewing to even onboarding, making sure that, you know, your candidates and your employees understand that their safety is absolutely important to you as an employer. That's something that's really important right now because they're thinking about not just themselves, but also their families. Yeah. So it's really important to know that someone who they might be working with or working for cares about their personal safety and is actually taking real steps to keep them safe and secure at work.
Great. Yeah, it's anything that we learned that the human side of work has really come to the forefront. So our young folks, I think, it's actually almost a good time if you think about it, because you get a lot more companies who are in the caring mode and really seeing that they're not just widgets in a room, that they've got to nurture their talent so that they stay long-term and be productive. So I appreciate you guys sort of setting the stage for the changes in the culture to come.
And the other, just real quick, there's one other thing that we didn't mention so far that I think is worth pointing out. There's a great article out there that you can probably Google up and find. I believe it was in the Washington Post, that talks about how diversity and inclusion has turned into diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And it's emphasis on the word belonging, and how that's kind of the next frontier or the next evolution of companies' diversity and inclusion strategies when it comes to workplace culture.
Yeah. It seems everyone's got a bit of ownership on that part, though, the company as well as the employee, to make that all happen. Well, absolutely. Now that we have a little vision in our view of what to expect from corporate culture, let's understand what companies are expecting from you, the candidate. And Pamela, you started to intimate this in terms of the skills. So I'm going to come to you, Shayla, for this question first. If you Google skills in demand, you'll get dozens of long lists. Well, Shayla, I'd ask you, can you narrow down for us your top 3 skills that companies are really seeking from early career professionals, and why these skills are so important?
Yeah. So I think Pamela and Kevin kind of touched on this, but adaptability, number one. We've seen everything change. Every aspect of your job has changed. Some role and responsibilities have been shifted because of this, the COVID environment. So making sure you have an open mindset and embracing the chaos. We say this at Way Up, embrace everything that comes at you. You know, it's not easy. There may be things you don't want to do, but be adaptable to any type of situation that you or your manager or your peers put you in, and embracing every challenge that comes at you. It's only going to make you stronger, more qualified, and ready for your next challenge. So that would be my number one. Number two, constantly being creative and taking risks, making sure that you're thinking outside the box, you know, doing research, kind of going above and beyond your role or your function at a job. Being willing to try things that are failing. So I always encourage my team to just try everything and anything, see what works, see what sticks, learn and grow from that. And just making sure that you're, you know, constantly looking for efficiencies at everything that you do. How can you make it better? Just always taking risks and being creative. And then last but not least, I would say collaboration and communication with other team members. There's a saying that like high functioning teams can accomplish way more than one individual. And that's so true. And it's especially so true now. So working well with others is key. Being able to work in projects, cross communication, being able to, you know, challenge other team members in a healthy way, really being open to group projects, working with other team members, and just making sure you're a team player is really key. And I had one other one. I'm just gonna throw out a fourth one really quickly, but passion and enthusiasm. Passion and enthusiasm. You know, you may get tasks that feel small or mundane, but like be excited about it. Take it as a challenge. Don't ever complain or say, you know, this isn't in my scope of work right now. Like passion and enthusiasm for everything you do at a company is huge. My team has this attitude that no task is too small. You know, they get a project and it may not be their, you know, dream project to work on, but they take everything with strides and they do their best and they blow everything out of the water. So making sure they're just being passionate and enthusiastic about everything at your company.
I hope everyone wrote those down. So it's creative, risk-taking, enthusiasm and passion, flexibility. So just take it as it comes. And that other one about the communication, I think that's really important with the teamwork because you've got the multi-generational workforce. So I know we're talking about early stage professionals, but you're coming into an office, even if you're working from home, with every age group imaginable, every ethnicity, every personality. So there's going to be folks you don't like. So don't think if you quit one job, you're going to go to the next job and everyone's going to be rosy. It's not how it works. So that emotional intelligence that, you know, Kevin intimated earlier is learning how to have that communication with everyone that we work with.
There's a saying, the grass is not always greener on the other side. And you find that a lot. I have people that leave one job because it was too chaotic and then they come back and they say, oh, it's like that everywhere. So it's not always greener on the other side.
It is so true. Well, thank you for that. So now let's shift to skills development. So we got a little idea of some of the top skills you all really should focus on developing because that's what the employers will want. It's really what's going to make you most successful. Well, how are you to develop that? I mean, internships have always been a great way to gain hands-on experience, to build fundamental job skills. But unfortunately, due to the pandemic, these opportunities have been cut short or cut out. So Jairo, I mean, you've worked with a lot of students and alumni in your day. So can you give us a few ideas of how or where young professionals can hone the skills that Shayla was just mentioning in today's virtual world in order to attract employers?
Lisa, honor to be here. So great points by Shayla as far as adaptability, and Kevin when it comes to being a thought leader and being productive for sure. But as far as quickly to build your skills, there's a lot of free certificate programs that you could use. You know, go with Grow with Google. You could do free virtual workshops, seminars, and sometimes even one-on-one coaching there. HubSpot has a great academy for some free programming there. Also, LinkedIn has something called Linda, where I know it's subscription based, but you'll be able to sharpen your skills that way. While, you know, back in my day, I still do for this, I always preach to volunteer professionally, joining an organization like a Prosponica or ASIS International or a National Black MBA, where you're part of a particular chapter, whether it's by state or whether it's by school, and then you're able to participate in various webinars like this one, seminars, virtual career fairs, sponsored events, and believe it or not, for students, it's fairly affordable, 15, 20 bucks. So for sure that Yeah, I'll give you the case. I'll give you an example. For me, I volunteered for Postponica for the past couple of years, and through Postponica, I was able to connect with individuals throughout LA, throughout Texas, throughout Florida. So for me, it's been great to expand my network, and whenever I need help or assistance in those areas, they're able to help me. So for sure, take advantage of those certificate programs. A lot of them are free, just to kind of increase your skills, and definitely volunteer professionally and join organizations related to your particular major, for sure.
That's great. But before I move on to the next question, did any of our other panelists have anything to add, Kevin, in terms of, because, Jairo really brought in some good virtual ways to develop skills. Do you have something to add?
I'm amazed. I'm absolutely amazed at what you can learn by doing a Google search. And so I tell my job seekers, all my job seekers, if they're a full-time job seeker and they're not currently working, structure every day as if it's a work day. Treat your job search as if it is your job. Get up every morning, do something good, healthy, get some exercise, get showered, get dressed, go to your workspace, and then spend a portion of your day on skill development. You can go out to Google, you can type in any kind of skill that you want. So, what's stopping a job seeker from going out on Indeed.com or LinkedIn and finding job descriptions of their dream jobs, and then looking and dissecting those job descriptions for the skills that are required, and then asking yourself, do I have these skills? Am I a HubSpot expert? Am I certified in HubSpot? If not, go online, find it, get certified, and use all of those job descriptions kind of as a checklist, if you will, of skills that you should be going out and acquiring. And then I also want to support Dr. Borgia on the volunteering, because volunteering is oftentimes a great way. One time I had a job seeker who was volunteering for the Humane Society walking dogs, and she came up with a clever social media campaign, because the director of that particular Humane Society didn't even know how to use Instagram. This purely a Facebook person, didn't know any other social media platform, didn't even know how to integrate all the platforms. So as a volunteer, she did that, and they started to see the pets getting adopted faster and faster. So they attributed the increase in improvement in the adoption rate to her social media campaigns. Well, that went onto her resume as a bullet point. And then Under Armour, when they were interviewing her, focused the interview questions on that particular bullet point and that particular volunteer experience, and it led to her getting employed. So I noticed one of the questions in the chat was from somebody who, how do I handle getting laid off in January? Here's what I'm going to tell you, because this is going to become a very common interview question in the future. What did you do during COVID? How did you utilize your time during COVID? If you were out of work and you were in the market, what were you doing during that period of time? And you want to tell a really good, strong story. You want to be able to say to the employer, I went out and became HubSpot certified. I went out and got the Gallup Clifton StrengthsFinder certification so I could be a strengths coach. Whatever it is that's related to your career, use this time very wisely to upskill and strengthen your portfolio.
Thank you, Kevin.
Well, thanks for adding that, Kevin. You actually kind of shifted us now to the next question, and it's coming to you actually, is because while they're developing skills, you can do this virtually. You've heard some great tips here today. You can still job search, and it's a very big element of a career journey. And searching is more than just submitting a resume. It is a daunting process. It's got many moving parts, and it really does require some careful attention. So, if you really want to encourage an employer's call. So Kevin, can you sort of continue on that thread? You're in touch with undergraduates and recent graduates almost daily. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you're seeing from early career job searchers?
I've been working with early career folks since I'm going to age myself here in a moment, since 1995. So I've either been hiring them, recruiting them, courting them, bringing them on board, onboarding them, training them, staffing them on assignments, and then exiting them. So I've seen everything, the good and the bad and the positive. The number one biggest mistake that job seekers are making right now is, and it goes to the emotional intelligence, and it goes to keeping calm and cool and collected, understanding that we live in a rapidly changing environment where people just don't have the answers. So don't get mad, don't get frustrated, and don't take it personally if the recruiter that you're working with isn't responding to you and is unresponsive. And remain professional. Don't attack the recruiter. Oh, you haven't followed up with me in 3 weeks. I've got some job seekers that got into the pipeline as a candidate for a job, and it's been 8 weeks and they've heard nothing from the recruiter. Now, there's nothing wrong with reaching out and following up professionally, but don't let that get you to slip into meltdown mode and start to panic and start. You just have to understand that's what comes with the territory in our current environment. Keep moving forward. Structure each day. Make it just like you're going. The big outplacement firms have done study after study, and they will tell you that the most successful job seekers are the people that treat their job search as if it is their job, their full-time job. Get up every day and go at it, and go. You have in finding a quiet workspace with good, reliable internet right now can be a challenge. Some of my job seekers are telling me they're sharing the house with young children who are in school and a spouse who's also trying to work from home. So it's taxing the house's bandwidth and their internet speed. Then the distractions of the dog barking, so on and so forth. So the thing that I encourage everybody to do, if you don't really understand the concept of emotional intelligence, you can go to Google, just type into Google, say, hey Siri, what's emotional intelligence? And then watch a couple videos and get familiar with the concept, because the most important thing, and then the other thing is, self-care is not selfish. You have to take good care of yourself. And so, and I know this sounds really silly, and I know it sounds kind of hokey and a little bit childish, right? You are what you eat and all that kind of stuff. You got to be taking really good care of yourself right now, because you'll find that you will emotionally be able to deal with the challenges of this environment much more effectively if you're going for a walk, doing some yoga, stretching, getting away from the house, getting away from the distractions for a little bit. And you got to remember, all clouds have their silver lining, and you can make lemonade from any lemons. And so that's what your focus has to be right now. And use the online resources, which gets me to my final point. And that is the other biggest mistake that we see a lot of early stage job seekers making is they get too easily distracted by all the resources that are available, because so many resources are available to us. You can literally take this thing any time of day, anywhere, and you can connect with. One time we had a job seeker. He always wanted to work for Geico because he thought they were really like the company that made the advertisements for Geico. Because Geico ads are funny, right? Washington crossing the Delaware Turnpike and all that stuff. And he always wanted to work there. And he had this idea for an ad campaign. He went out on LinkedIn. He found people who worked for the he found out the name of the advertising agency. Hey Siri, what advertising agency creates Geico commercials? Got the name of the firm, went over to LinkedIn, found people who worked there, reached out to them through LinkedIn, pitched this idea for this ad, and they gave him an internship. They didn't even have the job posted. So for the people in chat who are saying, how do I find jobs that aren't posted? That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, relationships are definitely, or building relationships are definitely the way to go, to be able to have different types of relationships as well, not just with corporate recruiters, but also headhunters as well, also individuals at universities. Really build a diverse network. That's going to help you get your foot in a lot of different doors and tap into that hidden job market that we hear so much about, where you've got so many jobs that companies need filled, but just aren't advertised on the traditional networks and traditional places. Building relationships really helps to get you into those kinds of opportunities.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's great advice from both of you. Kevin, the piece you said about structure is really so important. When we're out of work, it's very easy to get out of work mode, and we wake up and don't necessarily know what we're doing for the day. If you are to literally, and this is what I coach on, to schedule your week that has small pockets of time for your job search tasks, and those pockets of time for taking the walk, doing your yoga, your personal care areas, and spending time with family, so that you can have a diverse work week, just like you would if you were working. And whether it's night, morning, afternoon, you got to find your biorhythms of what's really good for you, that you're mentally going to be and physically of capacity to do those tasks. So that structure, creating that for yourself. I've heard my clients say that it's helped them lead a very effective calming campaign, so that they don't have that tremendous frustration, and they're always doing little by little to move that needle. And to your point, Pamela, the networking, it is critical to Open the door with conversations, not just ask, are you hiring? Do you know where the jobs are? But really network to get information about how a company operates, what their values are, what is their hiring process like, and what is the best way for me to approach a company versus just going in for the jugular. Because when you ask, you got a job? That answer is a yes or no. There's no, that conversation is over. So developing relationships is definitely a good do in the
And I
campaign.
would also advise job seekers not to take rejection personally. Understand that you're not going to be a fit for every job. Every job's not going to be a fit for you. And that's a conversation that I have with a lot of, especially, early career professionals, helping them to understand that just because you were turned down for a job, it doesn't mean that you were personally being rejected.
Right.
It just means that it just wasn't a good fit. And so you have to, really work to not get discouraged easily, kind of be able to kind of stay in the fight, stay in the search, continue to build those relationships, continue to build your brand, and just keep moving forward. Don't get discouraged and don't take it personally. Sometimes rejection is just, they say, God's direction, right? You're being redirected into something even better. So take it positively. You could have dodged a bullet. It could be a good thing. Don't be upset about it.
Right. Well, thanks for adding that. I want to address a question that we have from Susan. She said, how do you find true virtual jobs? Because she's been answering ads from LinkedIn and she's finding out they're scams. So Pamela, what's your thoughts on that tip?
Yeah, it's when finding virtual jobs, there are different ways to go about doing it. And there are a lot. If you go on, we've been talking about Google a lot during this meeting so far. If you hop on Google, you will literally find resources that are specific to helping you find virtual jobs. Those are job boards and resources that do exist. Also, LinkedIn is great. They do have a search tool within that job function where you can search for virtual or remote or work from home jobs. Indeed has that tool as well. Also, simple, ask the question. When you get a meeting with, whether it be a recruiter, hiring manager, whoever the representative is, simply ask, is this role truly virtual? And especially in the time of COVID, there are a lot of jobs that maybe they were office-based and now they're going the virtual route. So if you find yourself, on the phone with someone, in an email exchange with someone, simply asking that question may be the perfect way to get the answer and find out whether or not the job that you're after is truly virtual or not. But you do have a lot of online resources that will specifically lead you and guide you to virtual, remote, or work from home positions.
And then leverage Google. Once you get a lead on a virtual job, then go out to Google and leverage Google search to weed out the scams. So, the person who posted the question was worried about scams because yes, there are tons of them out there. I have job seekers fall into those traps every month. I get somebody telling me that they fell into one of them. So do some Google research. And you can actually, it's funny because when you type into Google, you know how it tells you what other people have Googled. So you might type in, is blah, blah, blah a scam? And you'll see that other people have that same question.
That works. I've done it. Yeah, that works.
Lisa, just to add.
Yes.
Oh, just to add, this is Shayla from Way Up. Just to add, Way Up also has the search functionality of virtual jobs, and we actually vet every single company that posts its jobs on Way Up. So you're able to create an account. Look, you can toggle for virtual. You'll see it's clearly identifiable as virtual or remote. And we vet every single company, so you will not have any scams on there. But I just wanted to put that out there as well.
No, that's great. Again, any of the early stage folks on this call or those that are mentoring early stage folks, you really should check out Way Up in terms of a source as a job search engine, because it's got the human touch and it's got a tremendous amount of resources that's really easy to sift through. I think you'll find their website tremendous, and just the people side of it is really great. So you've kind of all given some nice hints as to what not to do in the job search, some tips of how you can actually manage your search, being patient, being structured. And probably one of the biggest tips you've all kind of alluded to is being creative. You are going to have to knock down some different doors and avenues to make it happen. So by doing all that, by putting your best foot forward, interviews are definitely inevitable. So I want to look at how to crush it. We talked about the workplace culture and what to expect, some tips on how to develop some skills, how to manage a job search, and all of that is going to lead towards interviews. It's going to get there. So how can you crush it? Now, there are some very obvious and easy tactics for acing an interview. We all know to be on time, friendly, dress smart, and turn off the cell phones. It's a no-brainer. And if it isn't, come back and watch this video when you get it next week to remind yourself of the no-brainers. Well, I want to take it to the nth level. So Jairo, from you, can you start us off here? What can young professionals do to really stand out against the competition in an interview? And I think all of the tips are probably going to work for any stage professional, but can you give us your thoughts?
Sure. Kevin, great points on emotional intelligence, and Pamela, as far as building relationships, so important. As far as how to crush the interview, even take a step back, just even before that, how to create a competitive edge for that matter, just ensuring that your LinkedIn profile is up to speed, whether it's your professional headshot, your summaries in place, your experience is in place, volunteer experience is up to par. Any skills that you have should be definitely on your profile. Any recommendations that you may have, definitely ensure that those are up to speed and they don't have any grammatical errors. Of course, depending on your major, definitely bring a portfolio. If you're a graphic design major or interior design major, definitely bring that to the forefront because you're able to show your work, so to speak. And I know you alluded to Lisa before, as far as doing your research, understanding the company's vision, mission, core values, their products and services, latest news, latest trends. It'll make you give you a leg up and give a good impression on the actual interview. Also, now with the virtual interviews, a lot of stuff still applies. Whether it's eye contact, whether it's dressing for success, posture, a lot of nonverbal cues, that all still applies. And of course, being on time. I know you alluded that earlier, Lisa, but of course, checking your internet connection is so important. The morning of interview, charging your phone. I'll give you a funny story. I was a moderator on a panel similar to this, and my Zoom didn't work, the one on my laptop for whatever reason. So I plan B. Thank goodness I was able to pivot and use my cell phone and able to moderate a panel using the Zoom on my phone. So just something to be mindful of when it comes to the interview. Have a plan B, have something that in place. And of course, what we know, have 3 to 5 questions at the end and understand the type of interview it is. And if it's a behavioral style, knowing the STAR method, and also sending a thank you note and even a thank you card after the interview. So some of those same rules still apply, but those little tips that I gave you, hopefully those little nuggets help out.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, and so many of these interviews are virtual today, so you really do need to sort of pay attention, after suiting up, to actually set your environment and have that technology options, because we all know that it can fail. And to that point, have the phone number of the person that you're supposed to be speaking with. So if all fails, you can hop on the actual phone, which seems to be a dead item today. But thanks. No, those are great tips. Now, Shayla, I believe that you have sort of a framework that you provide all your candidates for really acing interviews. So can you share your insights there?
Yes, so we call it REAF, R-E-A-F. So Way Up stands by this. We do a lot of sessions with our university partnerships and a lot of our students. So it's research, enthusiasm, ask questions, and follow up. So for research, I'm going to take it a little step further from Jairo. So I once had somebody come in an interview and they were, meeting with me. I wasn't the hiring manager, but they noticed, I was an executive at the company. They actually looked at my track record, where I came from, where I went to school, and noticed that I had gone from retail fashion to now a SaaS platform and a more digital approach of candidate marketing. And so they had a really thoughtful question of why did you make the switch? You went such a drastic change of your career direction. And I just was so taken back. I was like, wow, they actually did their research on not just the company and what we've been up to, but me as an individual. So I think taking it one step further, and also looking into people that are doing the role that you're interviewing for. What type of skills have they acquired? Where did they go to school? What did they major in? Can you find any articles or social media on you kind of so to speak, not stalking, but looking it up and seeing what are they doing? What are they up to? How can I relate my skills to what those people are doing? So for enthusiasm, just making sure that, even if it's not your dream role, go in there like it is. There's nothing more that you want than this role. Making sure, you're talking with your hands and kind of just showing how excited you are. I'm excited to be on this panel. So you see me, moving my hands around. And then, so asking questions. So making sure that you're not asking the typical, what's an average day like? Or, what's your favorite part about working here? Listen to what they're saying in the interview and say, well, what is your biggest challenge with X? What have you found that's the biggest opportunity with why? You know, using things that they've talked about as you're going through the interview and really relating it back and challenging them a little bit. There's nothing more rewarding when I'm in an interview with even an entry-level candidate and they challenge me on a question. I am so taken back and I'm like, wow, that was an awesome question. And I, you know, have to think about it for a minute. But that is super impressive for me. And then last, like following up, don't do the typical, thank you so much for your time. Really take notes in the interview. Pay attention. What are they saying? What do they struggle at the company with? What is this role? What does success look like at this role? And then take it back, you know, take your time writing this thank you note, because that's the last impression that the interviewers are going to see. And make sure that you're relating your skills, what you can do, and your excitement for the company to everything that you just talked about. And then if you really want to step it up one more notch, I've only had this happen a couple times in interviews, but send a physical thank you card after you send their email. They will be probably shocked. I don't get a lot of them, but when I do, I'm like, wow, this candidate really means business and they really took it seriously.
Yeah, I used to keep mine. I would tell you, Shayla, when I would get thank you cards handwritten from a candidate, I would keep them and I would have like an entire wall just full of thank you cards from candidates. And it was great to have that and even look at that throughout the day. I love getting the handwritten thank you notes. Yeah.
It makes me smile. I'm like, wow, they are above and beyond. And it shows that they just went over the top and that they really mean that they're serious about this role.
And I agree with you on having those tough questions that come from candidates. I love when I get one of those. It shows that they're really thinking and they're really invested in the opportunity. Yep.
Yes.
That's great, ladies. And I just, before I hop on to the last question, this research that we're talking about, everyone, it doesn't have to be like you're studying for the SAT. A half hour of digging into somebody's LinkedIn profile and searching some articles beyond the company's website can give you some insights to really ask a question that's really sophisticated and interesting. So I'm going to get to my last question, but Kevin, you wanted to add something real quick?
Well, I was just going to say the preparation that you do before the interview is critical. And I think that's a pitfall that a lot of job seekers, they don't spend enough time in the preparation. And one of the favorite tools that I was taught, this goes back to like, I think the early 1990s, it was called the T chart, the letter T. And just imagine 2 columns on a piece of paper. Left-hand column is the job description. And it's other information you can get about the company. So take that job description, put it on the left, go to their social media, go to their careers pages, get as much info as you can on that company, put it on the left. And then on the right-hand side, reflect upon yourself, all of your experiences, both work experience, volunteer experience, inside and outside the workplace, and how it ties to that job description and to that company. And come prepared to tell stories that connect the dots. Make it easy for the person interviewing you to connect the dots and say, oh my God, this is the candidate we have to hire. This is the person. You know, and the best way to do that is to spend time dissecting that job description. Because, Dr. Borgia mentioned behavioral interviewing. A behavioral interview question is you're going to get to the point where you can predict what your interview questions are going to be before you walk into the interview, because the HR teams take that job description, and if it says must be a team player, you're going to get a behavioral interview question along the lines of, tell me about a time when you had to accomplish a task as a member of a team and you had people on the team who weren't very motivated, who really weren't carrying their share of the workload. What did you do? And if you've done that T-chart in advance and you've thought through all of this, you're going to walk in loaded and ready to give those great stories.
I'm so glad you shared that tactic. What they want and what I have, great way to preparation. And really it's the piece that gets missing. They know how to dress up, but we don't get our mind suited up. So all this effort that you're going to do in this job searching and the interviewing tips that we just heard, it's going to lead to the thing that you're looking for, the offer. All right, let's fast forward a bit. A job offer has been extended and you've accepted it. Now what? Now, while some companies are trying, most companies still do not have an effective onboarding process. So it's a good idea to have your own success plan. So Pamela, what are some of the steps that early stage professionals can take in their first 30 days to transition into their new job swiftly and successfully?
That's a great question. And I definitely agree with you that a lot of companies still don't have strong onboarding practices. And so it's great. It's important for you as a new hire, especially if you're early career stages, you're really just figuring all of this out. it's important for you to at least have some questions, some things that you really want to learn and understand. And one of the things that I always stress to folks who are starting a new job is to be ready to ask questions. You know, don't feel that sometimes they can feel that pressure that they have to kind of show up a certain way and kind of, present as if they already are experts and they know everything. Realistically, you're not going to know everything. This is new territory. It's a new position. It's okay. Relax your shoulders, ask questions. And I find a lot of hiring leaders and executives who are hiring these individuals, they want questions. They're looking for questions. They are eager to answer your questions. And if they don't hear those questions, they feel, well, maybe you're not as engaged as we thought you were. Maybe you're not as interested in learning as we thought you were. So show that you want to learn, come with your questions, ask questions about, where do I find this? Who do I reach out to about that? And if you've thought a few steps ahead, show that. Be that sponge. Be ready to absorb as much as you can and never stop learning. Just because those first 30 days have elapsed doesn't mean that the learning stops. Continue to ask those right questions and continue to build those connections within the organization. So that way you get your footing a little faster. Don't be shy at all.
Just
That's
to
great.
add on one thing too, Lisa, is I love when we hire, and so Way Up hires early career for our own teams as well, is just setting expectations with your manager and just asking, what do you want from me in the first 30 days? Where am I supposed to be? How far along? What, setting up meetings, just making sure that you're in constant communication too. I love when my team members are setting up one-on-ones with me and just be like, how am I progressing? Is there anything I can improve on? They're really asking me for real-time feedback at any point in the time in their first few days, whether it's a month or 30 days, 60 days. And I think it's awesome for you to show that you're enthusiastic about being and seeing what's next. What else can I be doing? How else can I be helping?
And also ask about organizational targets as well, because you might have, targets within your team, within your business unit, but then also within the organization. So it's good to understand what those targets are and how all the pieces fit together. So ask those questions and to Shayla's point, ask, where do I fit into all of that? How does my position add value? That's a great interview question to ask as well. How does this role add value? How does this role help accomplish those goals? Because that's going to help you to shape how you approach those initial 30 days.
That's great. Yeah, the deeper questions you ask, the more you get to know where you fit and where others fit in the organization. And the setting expectations, no better way to not be surprised on a performance review that you didn't meet the mark. Now, before I kick it over to our Q&A, because I'm going to get to everyone's questions here, Kevin, end us off on this question. How can young employees use their first 30 days to really get their career on track?
So all the points that have been made have been great. And the one thing that I was going to add to that, we live in a world where we are all bombarded with so much information. I mean, how many of us struggle to keep up with our email inbox, correct? Yeah. Then you've got text messaging on top of that. Then you have all of the, resources that are out there on the internet that are easily distracting. Think of it in three main buckets: people, process, technology. People. Who are the key relationships that I need to form? So when you're in that early stage, you're forming and building relationships, 360-degree relationships in every direction. How you treat the administrative help, how you treat the receptionist, all of that goes into your personal brand. So be conscious of the people. Then you get to the processes, learning all of the company processes, making sure you know how to do your timesheet, do your expense report, whatever processes are, and then all of the technology that's available to you in your job, making sure that you are mastering that technology and that you become like the go-to expert on behalf of your team. Through the years, I've worked with a lot of junior recruiters and talent acquisition professionals. And I come from an era back in the day when junior recruiters didn't want to have to put information into the applicant tracking system. That's how old I am, right? Okay, but the point there is, you're going to feel overwhelmed, and that's normal. That's totally normal, and that's a part of the process. Like the job search. Part of the job search process is dealing with rejection. Once you get the job and you're onboarding, part of the process is going to be dealing with that feeling of being overwhelmed. You just, again, emotional intelligence kicks in. You keep it all under control, keep it all in check. and focus on forging the right relationships, mastering all the processes and all the technology would be, I would say, the best advice I could sum up.
That is great, really. Everything that we've covered today is not complicated. It just requires some intention and some effort, and you can all set yourself up for success and not relying on anyone else, any company, any boss to help you get the job on board and be successful. There's so much that you can do, and obviously there's help out there, but that you can rely on yourself in very simple ways. So you've all shared some fantastic tips here today, and we're going to flip it over now to our audience. I've got some questions already in the chat room, and I want you to continue throwing questions in the chat. We've talked about workplace culture, what to expect, the skills that we need to develop to really get an opportunity in our lap, some job search do's and don'ts, some interview tactics to really set you up to ace that conversation, and then some simple strategies to be successful in that first 30 days so that you can set your career on track. Any of those areas or beyond, what question did you have? Throw it in the chat. And right now I'm going to address a few that I already see here, and one goes back to the whole job searching. So Melina asks, how do you find a recruiter that is right for you? Jairo, do you want to take that one?
I mean, for me, whether I was in a job search or even helping students, it's just, one that's always responsive, one that that, any feed. For me, it's about transparency as well. Being able to have someone follow up with you, being able for them to be transparent as far as, hey, what to expect from the resume, what to expect from the cover letter, what, from a coaching standpoint, how should I say, what should I not say, what are the best tactics? So to me, that's the best answer I could give as far as finding a recruiter. Just finding that right fit, finding the right person, leveraging LinkedIn as well.
Yeah.
So truly vetting them for the qualities that
if
you
I
want.
could just one, I think that he made great points, and I definitely think the right recruiter for you needs to be part coach as well. That was an excellent point. I would also add someone who's an expert in your industry. Correct. Someone who understands how to speak to managers that you want to approach and that you want to kind of get in good with. I've always found that a hospitality recruiter can be very, very different from an IT recruiter, from a finance recruiter, from a healthcare recruiter. And so if you can find someone who specializes in your industry or the industry you're hoping to break into, maybe they can help you identify some transferable skills, that could be really helpful to you in getting your foot in the right door.
That's a great idea. And I should get paid for how much I support Google. But if you Google finance recruiters, digital marketing recruiters, like put in your field and the word recruiters after, you can find some of those that specialize. You can look for them on LinkedIn and just put those keywords in there so that they're right for your market. Yeah. And I want to get to another question here. Susan asks, what is the best way to get your foot into the hidden job market? Kevin, your thoughts?
Oh, LinkedIn. And I'm not a salesman for LinkedIn, but I should be. They should be giving me a piece of every new LinkedIn account. I mean, it is so powerful. You can, if you have a dream company, you take the name of your dream company and you put it into the search box, and then you can add talent acquisition, college recruiting, campus recruiting, early career. There's a ton of different ways you could do that. You can also put in the name of your dream company or organization and then put in your alma mater and look at all of the alumni who are working there. You can actually just put in the name of your alma mater or your current university. And then there's a page on LinkedIn that LinkedIn builds for your university that shows you where your alumni are working geographically, what companies they're with, what they do, what they studied. I had a job seeker one time. She said, my dream job is to work in the communications department of the WWE, the wrestling, right? So we went to the search box and we typed in WWE, and then we put the university, so Salisbury University. By the way, you have to put it in quotation marks. So WWE, quotation mark, Salisbury University, quotation mark. It shows you all the alumni from your university who are working there. And wouldn't you know it, we found a senior communications executive in the WWE who had taken classes at Salisbury. Wow. Everybody in the classroom was blown away. They were like, you guys set that up. That's staged. You totally staged that. That's a plan. No, we hadn't. I mean, you can, any job seeker can take any organization that they want to work with, plug it into LinkedIn,
See the people.
follow the organization's LinkedIn page. That's number one. Number two, look for people who are involved in recruiting, HR, look for alumni, or look for the department head. One time I had a graphic designer who wanted to do graphic design for the New York Jets. We typed New York Jets graphic design. We found the head of creative services for the New York Jets. They communicated with each other on LinkedIn. He made a referral over, I believe it was to one of the other pro teams in the New York metro area. I think it was, might've been hockey, I think, because he didn't have any immediate need, but he made the referral. That student ended up, that job seeker ended up getting into that other organization, and then a year later was over at the Jets. So it's, the possibilities are endless, and it's so incredibly powerful.
So once again, make the effort to do the searching, keywording, and get your question out there. So we've got two more questions I think we can hit in these last 2 minutes. Cam asks, what advice would you give for a professional who has the education, but keeps hearing you don't have enough experience? So for example, I have a master's in organizational leadership, he says, and my last full-time job was in 2018. However, the rejection, at least for me, is I don't have enough years experience needed for the job description. Shayla, you want to give your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think this is something that I definitely hear a lot from our candidates as well, going for their masters and then just taking time off since they had their last job. But I think looking into startup companies, you know, maybe not the enterprise level companies that are looking for those years of experience, but really scoping out some of the startups, or even just, I think we mentioned earlier, like expanding on upskilling. So even though you don't have the years of experience, maybe you could find a tool or a program or something that they're looking for that you maybe didn't have on the job, but that you could get now. But I know that startups are really looking for people that have, you know, education, but not always the amount of years of experience. You know, they want people scrappy that are willing to get their hands dirty and get, you know, be creative and kind of just jump right in. So that would be my one piece of advice is try maybe going for the startup companies, and then also upskilling.
Great, thanks. So targeting and gaining some additional complementary skill sets. Great. Our last question, I'll direct this to you, Pamela. Advice for people of color and how they can create networks and opportunities. And if you can give us a 30-second clip on this.
That's a great question. And so when it comes to specifically diverse audiences, people of color, I would absolutely recommend, you know, research. If you're going to talk about job search success, was that the question? I just want to make sure I heard you correctly.
Networking, how to create networking opportunities. Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn is a great tool again. Right now, there are so many, you know, groups on LinkedIn. There are so many individuals there that are diverse and that are other persons of color that would be interested in connecting with you and are in those positions that would benefit you. And then also, I would say that whatever your industry is, whatever your niche is, seek out networking groups. I know there are associations for Black accountants, Black MBAs, Latino professionals, Asian American professionals. You know, definitely look for those organizations and do your research and consider, you know, possibly attending some of their events just to really build your network in that particular space, if that's what you would like to do.
One word sum up, targeting.
Targeting.
Yeah.
Networking.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah, this has been fantastic. We hit our hour mark. I want to be mindful of everyone's time. So I'd like to give a big thanks to our panelists for their time and energy and this insightful discussion. I want to thank our audience here for your time, your participation. And I'll remind you that today's webinar has been recorded, so we'll be sending out later next week. You can catch anything you missed or share it with your colleagues. Right? And I'll be hosting webinars monthly, free webinars, so keep a lookout for a topic of interest and keep in touch. Call me, email me, LinkedIn me with any questions or ideas, and I'm happy to share my network. Because when we work together, everyone's mission is possible. Good luck out there. See you soon.